Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. Let me remind you guys what this show is about in case you are new to the show or maybe you've been here before but you forgot. I'm just going to remind you about what Hot Topics is about. It's called antisocial personality disorder, excuse me. Um, all right. Give me 1 second. My guest made a correction for me. So I'm actually going to correct the title of the show. All right. So thank you to my guest. Shout out to her. All right. So swinging back into my intro. Yeah. So Hot Topic is the show where we like to have real talk about real things, you guys, as this show is a production of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. I like to tutor you. I like to educate you. So think of this as a weird twist, edgy educational program, right? So the point is, all these things that we bring to your attention, all of it is to expose you to what is out there and for you to learn something, right? So think of this as a twist to an educational show. And I am looking forward to this show. And I know I say that in every show, but any opportunity I have to talk about mental illness, mental health, I am all for it with my background in mental health counseling. Any opportunity I have to kind of geek out about mental illness, I'm all for it. So let's dive right into it. So let's start with the topic, which actually was just corrected by my guest in the background. It is anti-social personality disorder. So that is the topic for today. What is antisocial personality disorder? So we're going to get into that. So I'm looking forward to that. So let's see where that goes. So my guest today, who is helping me out in the background here, her name is Amira Martin. And let me tell you about who she is. So, Amira Martin, LCSW, is a communication expert and psychotherapist who owns Amira for Her, which is a group private practice, and teaches at Columbia University School of Social Work. She is committed to establishing safe and supportive therapy spaces. I am all for that, you guys. All right, so without further ado, let's bring her to the stage. Hi, Amira. How are you doing today?
Hi, Gabrielle. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, and thank you for correcting me. It is anti-social personality disorder. So I will make those changes in all the show notes. But let's dive right into it. So you are here to talk to us about anti-social personality disorder. So
Yes.
I am going to just pass the baton over to you and have you dive right into it.
Okay, terrific, terrific. So, antisocial personality disorder is a form of personality disorder. So, I'll start with that, right? The first thing that's important to know is that in mental health, there are different sets of mental health issues and challenges that are categorized. And one of the categories is personality disorders. And when you think about a personality disorder, it's not an illness like depression or anxiety or PTSD. It's a different sort of an illness. And it's an illness that really impacts the person who has it. It impacts their personality, right? So you would see it in the way that they think, the way that they behave, the way that they feel, the way that they relate to the world and to other people. And you'll also see a lot of rigidity, a lot of the same exact behavior patterns over and over in people with a personality disorder. And personality disorders are really broad, right? Like there's are so many different personality disorders and so many types of um, challenging issues with personalities. So, some of them are easier to live with and manage than others, right? And they're not something that keeps you out of employment or out of education or out of being able to do things in life like get married or have a family, right? But they are difficult in terms of how you relate to others when you have one, right? There are lots of challenges around that, lots of challenges around flexibility, lots of challenges around, sometimes around empathy, around that sort of thing. So that's a personality disorder in general, right? Now, when you think about antisocial personality disorder, it doesn't mean that you don't want to make friends, right? We hear the word social and we think, oh, this person doesn't want to make friends. They're not a friendly person. They're not open to meeting people. They're, someone who they're shut in, someone who wants to stay at home all the time. That is not what antisocial personality disorder is about, right? This is a sort of a personality disorder um, where the person has those same challenges, right? Challenges with their mood, how they relate to others, how they perceive the world, how they perceive themselves, and it's shown in their behavior, right? But with antisocial personality disorder, it's a very challenging type of personality disorder, and people with disorder are usually impulsive. They're often irresponsible, meaning they don't make plans and stick to them. They don't think about tomorrow. They don't think about what the future is going to hold. They sometimes don't even worry about what the future holds. They're often very much living for today. And there's often a lot of criminal behavior. Not always, but there's a good chance that there is. Um, People with personality disorders and with antisocial personality disorder are not particularly it's not an intellectual illness, right? It's not an intellectual challenge. Rather, they're perfectly smart, capable. Sometimes they're even higher than average in terms of intelligence. I think that that's very common for them to actually be intelligent and bright. But what you see in someone with antisocial personality, you're going to see that they're very manipulative, that they're deceitful, that they're reckless, that they don't think about other people's feelings, right? And it ranges in severity, just like other personality disorders. It ranges in severity from occasional, what we might call bad behavior, to repeatedly breaking the law and committing serious crimes. I remember once I spoke with a police investigator, a detective, about antisocial personality disorder. And one of the things that he shared with me, and that I know also from the research, is that people with antisocial personality disorder, which is also called psychopathy, or sociopathy. People with this disorder um, often will commit different types of crimes, right? So they're not a criminal who commits one type of crime. They'll commit multiple types of crimes, right? So you'll see someone who, might consider robbing a workplace that they work at. They might be interested in having sex with minors. They might be selling marijuana. Like you might see all these different sorts of crimes, someone who has antisocial personality disorder. And you also actually might see them in a really high ranking position, a position of authority, right? So, and I'm not, at all trying to say that all police officers have this disorder, but some do, right? Those are sorts of the positions that they may be drawn to because they're given authority with a badge and a gun. So people in law enforcement, attorneys, judges, that sort of thing. A lot of CEOs, a lot of people in that sort of role are people who are more likely to have antisocial personality disorder, again, because of the fact that they're in a position of power and authority, and they want to be able to use that for their gratification. Okay. Now, when you think about antisocial personality disorder, here's a little bit more of the specifics around it, right? So these people are very often manipulating or violating the rights of others in some form or fashion. They really have no regret or very little ability to actually feel or experience regret or remorse, right? Some of them don't have the ability to actually feel love and connection to anyone. Some of these individuals may be able to feel a small amount of love and connection towards the people that are very close to them, or the people, the family that they came from. They may feel some connection towards those individuals, but some don't feel any connection towards anyone at all, whether it's their mother, whether it's their child, whether it's their partner, whether it's their best friend of 25 years, right? But they're going to form those relationships anyway because they want to be perceived as normal. And because being perceived as normal is what allows them to succeed in the world, whether it's through exploiting people or whether it's through, professional white collar crime, or whether it's just through working really hard to rank high professionally in our society, where they're then able to just feel powerful. Again, not all people with this disorder will commit crime, but many do. So another thing to think about is that they lack guilt, right? So this is someone who, no matter what happens, they're not going to say, I did it, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. They may say those words from time to time, but you're going to see by their actions that they don't mean it, right? And usually you see a history of like conduct disorder, or a child who was maybe truant from school, who was disrespectful to the teacher, who early on didn't have respect for authority, who has a really challenging family life. You may see some of that in their background when you look at their background in terms of how they grew up. So those are the first things that I think is important to think about, is what this illness looks like and what it means, right? Now, it's really unfortunate, but one of the things that I know as a mental health professional is that we don't learn enough about, the really serious personality disorders like antisocial personality disorder in our society, period, right? So that goes for practitioners like myself, that goes for lay people, that goes for educational system. Like, there's just not enough information about mental health, period, but also about disorders like antisocial personality disorder. So one of the things that we need to do as mental health practitioners, and just as a society, is learn more about mental health, right? When we think about the level of crime that's committed in our country and across the globe, there's a significant portion of crime that's committed by the same people repeatedly. And those are the people who have disorders like antisocial personality disorder, right? It's not your person who commits a crime once, or a person who gets in trouble a couple of times. There's a really big group of people who commit the same exact um, who commit crimes repeatedly, year after year, or every time that they get out, within a month or two or six, they're back in, or they've committed some other crime, but they haven't been caught just yet. And that's why we need to learn about this, because we need it for everything. We need to keep ourselves safe, to keep our children safe, to keep our family safe. Our justice system needs to be more understanding in this area and think this through across the board, just for everyone's well-being. Um, Now, a couple of other things that I want to share, right? People with this disorder also are more likely to abuse substances. It's a challenge not to be able to connect, right? And I'm not at all saying this. I hate to say it as a therapist, yeah, the idea that I'm supposed to be empathic, and I am, but I'm not saying this in a place of empathy, but I'm coming from a place of, it's important to know this so that people can keep themselves safe, right? Um, but so their lack of feeling is also to themselves, right? Like, they don't feel connected to anyone. And they may not even feel like a strong sense of self-love, or even get that concept, right? So you see a lot of things like substance abuse, you see a lot of violence, you see more suicide, you see more dying prematurely from reckless behavior, like driving while drunk and that sort of thing. And then the one thing that I think is really, really, really important to know is that you see a lot more spousal abuse, right? And people with this disorder, when you think about domestic violence, right, for example, about half of the people who commit domestic violence have a disorder like a personality disorder, about 50% statistically. And when you look at that 50%, there's a smaller percentage in there. I'm not sure of the exact number, I don't have it on hand, but I'll say about 5 to 10% who have a disorder like antisocial personality disorder or malignant narcissism. And those are the people who commit the worst abuse, the most violent forms of abuse to their spouses and to their children. Those are the people who um, end up sexually assaulting their spouse, sexually assaulting their child, may sexually exploit other children, other people in the community. Violence comes very easy for them. It's a means of gathering control and authority. So those are some really important things to think about when you think about antisocial personality disorders. That it affects so many people, that one person who has this disorder can bring down and impact their entire family in terms of trauma, community members in terms of trauma, um, take up, a great deal of income in terms of like the legal system, and pro bono attorneys and free stuff that they'll receive in order to get help, right? They may rob their place of employment, on and on and on. So this is why this is important to think about. This is a real crisis, and an area that enough attention has not been paid to in our community and just in general. It's a real safety area, that I think people should really learn about and learn more about. So, Gabrielle, I wasn't sure if you had any particular questions for me.
Well, thank you so much for that. By the way, I was letting you, I was letting you
Yeah,
do your spiel, so I
no, I
didn't want to
appreciate it.
interrupt.
Hmm.
So, so, so now my question is, so when you talk about people with personality disorders, they commit the worst abuse. So, is it safe to assume that people who commit crimes and people who abuse others have personality disorder?
Right. So, I just want to say, so not all people with personality disorders in general commit crimes or abuse, right? They are more, you might say, more of like the difficult people, right? Like that aunt that's always, posing some problem with what you made for dinner, what you're wearing, what her daughter's wearing, where you're going to go to college, like that difficult person that you might know of. Those are more of the people with personality disorders. Um, that's what that might look like, right? But with antisocial personality disorder, those are the ones who really commit more crime than anyone else, right? They're massive difference in the amount of crime and negative things that they do. So, do all people who commit crimes or who are abusive suffer from a personality disorder at all? No, not all do. A lot of people who, we know that a lot of people who do crimes, it sometimes just means to an end, right? Like they may be from a community where they don't have the resources to be able to find employment, or they may be dealing with racism, classism, some of the institutional racism and structural issues that we all face, especially as Black and Brown people. So sometimes it can just be a crime can just be a means to an end, right? Like I need to pay my rent this month, or I need to give my mom $500 so that she can make the rent this month. I don't have any way to do it. I don't have the education. I don't have the support system. I don't have any of the things that I need because of what I was born into. So I'm going to find a way to get that money. And that means, get on the train and rob some man of his wallet. I'm going to do it, right? So no, not everyone who commits a crime is pathological, is sick in any way. Um, but there's a specific subsection of people who have this disorder, who are pathological, who commit crimes repeatedly, and it's never done out of need, right? It's done out of a feeling of joy. It's done out of a thrill for them that they get out of it. It's done for feeling in control of people and oppressing people and controlling people. It's done for really pathological reasons as opposed to the person who's trying to make the rent, so they decide to rob somebody. So that's one of the really big differences.
So, and you bring up an interesting comparison in that if we look at all the people that commit crime, you have different people that commit crime. So you have the people that commit crimes because it's out of need, like maybe they're hungry or maybe they just need money or
Exactly.
they just want a fancy watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have those that commit crimes because they really just want to hurt people and they just want to see the destruction of humankind, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
intentions are different. So not all crime is the same,
Right.
and the intentions are different across people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
so now, as you were talking, I was thinking of I watch a lot of Law and Order, and
Mm-hmm.
particularly the ones with kids, where the kids are sociopaths and psychopaths. It's usually the mom and dad are loving and they just think, I mean, I don't know if you're talking more about adults, but I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
like kids, and
Mhm.
you know they
Right.
can be sociopaths and psychopaths too,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the way they portray it on Law and Order is like the parents are always loving and they'll just love it away by giving him constant hugs and kisses, um and the kid is usually like torturing like a pet
Yeah.
or a younger sibling or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
is I mean, I know it's kind of the TV depiction of it, but
Mhm.
is that is that the way to look at antisocial personality disorder, particularly
Mhm.
in kids?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, Gabrielle. So there's a couple of things with, well, the clinical term, right? Like if you look in the DSM-4, our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Providers, you'll see the term antisocial personality disorder as the clinical term, right? But in terms of what we call it, right? Plenty of people, myself included, call it psychopathy or being a psychopath, or sociopathy, being a sociopath, right? And there are a couple of differences. So, psychopathy, when you think of there are two types of psychopathy. Type 1 is psychopathy that is inherited, it's genetic. It's been studied, and people who have type 1 genetic psychopathy also actually have a difference in their brain, in the gray matter in their brain. Um, and that's where that comes from, that callous disregard for other humans, that callous dominance, all of that sort of stuff. It's genetic for type 1 psychopaths. Again, a section of antisocial personality disorder. Type 2 um, psychopaths, or they also call people with sociopathy, that's the same pool of people. Type 2 are people who were horrifically abused, mistreated, and neglected during their childhood and during their formative years. So they've turned off, or they haven't really developed that part of their brain because they didn't experience it. They don't trust the world. They're so traumatized and damaged that they're not able to connect and care about others in that way. And they can potentially someday make some small amount of progress, but this stuff is done really early on and it's kind of set in stone. So it depends on what type of psychopath you're talking about. And we don't know until they're tested or have a brain scan, right? But like, so that parent, those parents on SVU, right, or on these shows, they may be the loving parents who had, this in their genetics, and so they have this child who's a psychopath, right, or who has antisocial personality disorder. It's not diagnosed in childhood. It's diagnosed usually as conduct disorder during childhood because the mental health profession really wants to give children a chance to heal and to grow and to do something different, right? So we don't want to label children at a young age as having such a significant disorder. Um, so yeah, they can be born that way, and the loving parent is exactly what they need. It truly, truly is a loving parent, um, having to face the consequences of their actions consistently, right? So not being like guarded from the negative ramifications for the stuff they've done. If they didn't do their homework, they need to get in trouble for that. If they're not, showing up for school, they need to get in trouble for that. Like getting in trouble is helpful for these kids, and so is being loved tremendously, and so is a consistent parenting, like consistent parenting routine. A big challenge with kids who have these disorders is that they throw their parents off. They're so difficult to take care of day to day, just in their nature. Again, they're born this way, some of them, um, that they throw their parents off their game, and the parent is not the kind, loving, nurturing parent that they may be to their other children, right? And then that makes things worse. That's a worse clinical outcome for this child. So it's really important that parents connect with other parents, connect with, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, connect with a therapist for themselves, get their child in treatment as early as possible to prevent things from worsening, and to try to have a better outcome. Then for the type 2 psychopaths, right, those children who have this, have the early signs of this disorder, who may later develop this disorder, they didn't have parents who were loving and kind and caring and connected, or whoever their primary caregiver or caregivers were abusive, were hitting them. A lot of this cruel punishment that we see, where, I read on the news yesterday about a little child, a 5-year-old, being locked in a dog cage, not being fed for 2 days at a time, being forced to drink hot water, all sorts of horrific abuse. That's where you get those type 2 psychopaths from. So it really varies. It really depends on the individual child and why they have that disorder. One of the ways that, and I've had parents ask me this a number of times, one of the ways that you can kind of start to tell if your child potentially has a problem like this is to pay attention to them, right? How much empathy do they show to other children? If their younger cousin gets hurt, do they rush over and try to help them? Do they consistently seem to care about other children, animals, other people? Do they seem really, really selfish and, only focused on themselves, and like other people getting hurt doesn't matter to them, or even worse, seems funny to them or amusing to them? Do you see that consistently? So empathy is really a key factor in this, and something that you want to think about when you're trying to figure it out. But if you have a child with this, seek therapy, or if you suspect you have a child with this disorder, or if you're just having trouble parenting your child just seems difficult. Getting therapy, getting help for you as a parent is absolutely key. It's monumental in being able to help your kid have a better outcome. And then, of course, getting therapy for them. But as the parent, we're the one who's in control. Sorry, the smoke's gonna get into my throat, but we're the one who's in control of what our child's lives look like. So if we have that support behind us, especially if we have concerns, it makes all the difference in the world. So Gabrielle, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, 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 it did.
Okay.
So the ones, so again, there's that comparison that you're giving, right? So you have the one, the the one type of um, psychopaths that
Mm-hmm.
are born with it. It's the way that their brain is shaped, and then you have the ones that end up that way due to constant abuse. So now, sorry, before I ask my question, can you just elaborate again? What is the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath?
Yeah. So all sociopaths are type 2 psychopaths. That's really the difference. It's just another name for it. So they're the people who were born normal and were mistreated so badly that they have learned to behave this way and haven't been able to develop in their own feelings and connection to others and all that sort of stuff. So they're less. A lot of times they'll be less violent, even if they're consistently committing crimes. They're less violent crimes. They have the ability to feel a little more, not a normal amount, but a little more empathy and connection, and even love towards their family members or towards their children, that sort of thing. It's not going to be a quote unquote normal amount, but it's normal for them. So they're like a slightly improved version of a psychopath, which is again the psychopath type 2, the one who came from the abuse.
So the ones, okay, so then the psychopaths, then, since they're born with it, should we just lock them up now? Like, should we just throw them in the prison while
Just
we're at it?
do like a clean sweep, right? Just like
Yeah.
brain scan at birth and throw them away. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And why not, right? Because there is the potential for everyone who is born on this planet to behave well, right? If they're given guidance, if they're given consequences for their actions from day one, if they're given a supportive, loving home environment, even if they're not given those things and they make the decision in their mind that they're going to be different, they will be different, right? And I know I kind of pointed to this earlier, but a lot of people in power have psychopathy, born with it, type 1, right? So CEOs who are doing amazing things with companies, right? Takes a certain amount of what we might consider bravery, but what also really could also be considered just disregard for the emotions of others, so they can make those decisions solely based on the needs of the business, and it's not coming from a hard space. When I've had to let go of an employee or discipline an employee for an issue, I had to think it through. I stayed up at night thinking about. They don't do those sorts of things. It's purely clear cut. How am I going to do this and why? What's important? What do I need? How to get it? So they can be really powerful in those leadership roles. Judges, right? A lot of our judges who get work their way into those positions, again, have to make a decision based on the law. So you have to cut out all that stuff. Um, they can make terrific judges, right? Police officers, lawyers, all sorts of things and positions. There's a book, I can't think of the gentleman's name right now, that I had read, um, where he was a brain researcher, and it's in my book. He was a brain researcher, and he talks about learning that he was a psychopath, a type 1 psychopath. And here he is, this really well known researcher who studies the human mind and the human brain and has has his PhD and has a clinic that he's working in and research studies that he's doing. He does some um, brain scans, and he adds himself to the pile just as like a comparison, as an additional normal brain to compare the brains of sociopaths and normal people, or psychopaths and quote unquote normal people. And he learns that he's an actual psychopath. And he has to live with that, and he has to digest that. And so then he talks to his family, and he realizes that he's from a long line of psychopaths. And 100 years ago, his family members were actually literally related to Lizzie Borden, right? The woman who killed, well, I'm not sure if it was her family or her husband, who we all have read about, and a number of other well known psychopaths who have done horrific things. So 100 years ago, his family was very violent, and there was a lot of murder and violence in the family. And then as time went on, they just became highly successful, right? Because they used their ability differently because of the impact of, like, you will go to jail if you do this. So this man talks about his life. He talks about what it was like for him to realize that he was an actual psychopath, that he had antisocial personality disorder, what it means to his family, to his children. He's also a dad, right? He's married, he has a wife. He talks about how he never felt like he loved his wife. He felt sexually attracted to her, and he admired her intelligence, and he admired the way that she took care of their children, and he admired her grit and determination in different areas, but he never actually felt the feeling of love towards her. But that was enough for him to be loyal and committed to her and to work hard in his career to provide well for her and for his children, right? So no, not everyone who has this disorder is like a quote unquote throwaway person. Every person has the ability to decide this, right? But the problem is that some of these people, they've already made the decision about who they're going to be, and they dive in deep, and they don't even have a minute or take a minute to reflect or gain any insight. And some would never stop doing the crimes and doing the things. And so, you don't want to think that if you're dating someone and you find out, or they tell you that they have antisocial personality disorder, or you see signs of it, and you go to a therapist or whatever it is. I don't want people to walk away thinking, well, if this person just decides to be better, it's going to all be different. If they've been being violent, if they have been exploiting you, if they have been exploiting the law, that's going to continue. That's not going to change. But there is hope for everyone who's born into the world with this condition. You see the difference in terms of what I mean by that? I hope that answers your question, Gabrielle.
Right, right. And that, we can't just we don't want to we don't want it to be like a Minority Report thing where, you're
Exactly.
predicting their ability to commit crime like at birth. Like, you want to give them a chance.
Right.
You want to give their upbringing a chance to kind of work their system. You want to allow for things to take place and not just, let's just cut them off now while they're born,
Right.
because things change, like um the way that they're raised, the type of schools they go to, their friends, that might
Hmm.
actually change the dynamic of how they end up. And that's where the nature versus nurture and
Hmm.
argument comes in, is that you may be born a certain way, but because of how you're nurtured, that might actually change your brain chemistry. Um, so, that
Hmm.
so we have to allow for things to take place and not just cut them
Absolutely.
off at the
Hmm.
beginning. Um, so I know you gotta run. I definitely would
Yes.
like to continue this conversation a little bit more. So, let's just jump into it. Um, I like to ask my guests words of wisdom to share with our audience. So, Amira, do you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
I do. So one of the things I want to say is that this is for just for everyone, right? We have finally, I think, as a country, kind of come to accept that mental health issues are real, and that people need help for them, right? And I also think, especially in the BIPOC community, we've made some major strides in terms of understanding that and accepting that and understanding the need for treatment and even just engaging with a therapist and working on ourselves just to grow, even if we don't have a mental health challenge, right? You can go to therapy if you just want to talk about yourself, who you are, what your life has been, what your story has been. You want to gain insight, you want to grow, you want support, right? There are all sorts of reasons to go to therapy outside of having a mental health challenge, right? It's just generally a useful thing. Um, but along with that, and besides that, one of the things that I think is really important is to not only learn about the things like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, PTSD, like all the serious, significant disorders that we're all learning about, and that impacted a lot of us during COVID, frankly, and after COVID, just because of what happened. But also learning about personality disorders, because if you're in the world, if you're a person who's dating, working somewhere, married to someone, has children who may date someday or get have if you have friends, if you're functioning in this world, you want to learn more about people, and you want to learn more about what some of the things that you might be seeing day to day are in people. You want to learn more about yourself and some of the things that may be impacting you. And you also want to learn and be able to talk about and teach the people you care about how to keep themselves safe, right? So I really want to encourage you to think about learning more about antisocial personality disorder, particularly. If you're coming out of a relationship with a person with either a really significant disorder and you could kind of sense that there was something wrong, or if they've been, even if they've just been abusive towards you and you're leaving that relationship, I do want to mention that I wrote a book, Healing from an Abusive Relationship, Life After the Breakup. It's available on Amazon, and I would be thrilled if you would take a look at it and consider buying it. Okay. So that's what I wanted to share, Gabrielle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So, I know you got to run. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the show. So let me just take a moment to thank you, Amira Martin, for coming on Hot Topics. I do appreciate it. And I know that I will see you again.
Terrific. Thanks, Gabrielle. Bye bye.
Bye. All right, you guys. So that was very, very informative. So I know she had to run. So what I want to do is she sent over a video that explains psychopathy a little bit more. So I want to take a moment to play that video for you as it is part of our topic today. So I'm going to go ahead and play that video for you right now.
So, welcome to Phenomenal Private Practice with Amira Martin. Today, I want to talk about a subject that's really pretty frightening, right? But it's really also important to talk about. And this is a subject that many of us who work in this field do not know enough about. And that subject is psychopathy, right? So, antisocial personality disorder is the formal diagnosis, but psychopathy, sociopathy, the sorts of people with the behaviors that are most dangerous for us in society. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I think it's really important as therapists that we think about this, that we learn about this. There's a really big gap in knowledge when it comes to psychopaths and sociopaths. So it's really important that we understand this, because plenty of the clients who come into our practice who are dealing with couples therapy issues, or who may be brought in by a family member, a friend, even people in a variety of the workplaces that our clients work in, may be dealing with this disorder. And we need to know what the traits look like and what the effect is on the people around them. So please stay tuned. This is really important learning, and it may help you in your career. So, antisocial personality disorder, what is it, right? Well, there are a number of traits that we can look at that tell us who are the psychopaths, who are the sociopaths, and I want to help you identify it. So I have this list here of 22 traits that we can think about. The first one is these people lack regard for others' feelings. They really just don't care about how other people feel. For the most part, they won't outright say that, but their behavior will say that. You'll also see a lack of regard for others' rights. So, this is why people are victimized by them and victimized usually repeatedly by them, whether it's their loved one or an employer or anyone who's connected with them. They generally just look for ways that they can exploit others and they don't care about others' rights or feelings. They're extremely callous. That's another trait. They're very callous. They don't have emotions. A lot of time they don't have emotions at all. Sometimes they'll fake emotions in order to fit in. And if they do have emotions, that's usually someone who's a sociopath and not a psychopath. But if they do have some emotions, they're very minimal. They're indifferent to others, feelings, ideas, thoughts, all of that. Most of their behavior is really self serving, right? It's all about what can I get? How can I get something? They lack remorse. They may cry when they're caught doing a crime. They may cry when they are, needing to put on a show to show how sorry they are, but they actually lack remorse. They don't feel anything on the inside. They may or may not have a criminal background, right? Not every psychopath or sociopath commits crimes that they are caught for. Some commit crimes that they are not caught for. Some commit white collar crimes that they are not caught for. Some do things like work in law enforcement or become attorneys or other positions of power where they can, exploit and do things without necessarily having to worry about being arrested, right? Another thing that you see is persistent lying. Psychopaths and sociopaths love to lie. They enjoy feeling like they got over on you and that they've tricked you or tricked the system or that they're getting away with something. They're getting away with that crime that they did. But what they don't know is that they're usually not getting away with anything. Things usually catch up to people. They enjoy exploiting others again for their own gain. So they'll put on a whole performance, a song and dance, a whole sorrow story just to get what they want out of somebody. They're often cynical, they're often disrespectful, they often use charm or a witty personality to manipulate others into believing them and to believing their story. They're very arrogant. They truly believe that they're better than other people. They're extremely opinionated, right? You're not going to find a psychopath or a sociopath who doesn't have strong opinions. They're very impulsive and they fail to plan ahead. Now, when it comes to issues like domestic violence, a good percentage of the perpetrators are somewhere along the narcissistic spectrum. So either they have full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, they have or they have antisocial personality disorder. So they're somewhere between antisocial personality disorder and some of the lower issues on that same continuum. So you will see people who are perpetrators of domestic violence who have who can be diagnosed rather with antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. And if you just explore psychopathy and sociopathy, you'll also see that. They're oftentimes very hostile and irritable. They're just irritable all the time for no reason. They may be agitated or aggressive. You may see them behave violently. They don't consider the negative consequences of their behavior. Most of the time, they don't even think they're going to get caught. They think they can outsmart everyone, but they're not even thinking about it generally. Will I get caught and what will happen? What would be the negative consequences of me doing this? They just do whatever they feel like in the moment. And again, lacking empathy and connection to others and wanting to take advantage. Most of the time, what they want to do in the moment is not anything that's useful. They're very irresponsible, right? They repeatedly fail to fulfill most of their obligations, their financial obligations, their work obligations. They repeatedly fail that because they're just irresponsible and they just don't care. If you have any questions or want to know more about psychopathy, sociopathy, antisocial personality disorder, again, that's the clinical term, or narcissism, or any other mental health issues or topics, feel free to shoot me an email, Amira at phenomenalprivatepracticewithamira.com. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Please take care of yourself.
And you heard that right. You heard that right. So on that note, let's just sorry. Let me go ahead and jump to her contact information. So Amira had to run, so I'm just going to go ahead and share her contact information with you guys so you guys can follow up with her. So Amira Martin, she has a lot of contact information, you guys. So make sure you take note. But of course, all of this information is provided in the description. So whether you are watching this on video or listening to this on a podcast, all of this information will be provided to you. But I will just say it here. So Amira Martin, you can find her on the web. Her website is www.amiraforher.com. Let me just make sure I say it all. All right, so she has 4 Facebook accounts. You guys, she got 4 of them. So I'm just going to go through each one. So the first one, it is her personal Facebook, Amira Martin. The second one is Amira Martin, psychotherapist and author. So that's the second one. The third one is Healing NYC. And the fourth one is Phenomenal Private Practice with Amira. So I encourage you to follow her on all of her Facebook accounts, you guys. Now, as for the Instagram, it is scrolling below. But she also has 4 Instagram accounts, you guys. So the first one is, I'm just gonna make sure I get it, the Doctor and Lady Amira. The second one is author Amira Martin. The third one is Amira Black Brown Healing, and the fourth one is Phenomenal Private Practice Amira. So I want you to track down all of those Facebook accounts. I want you to track down all of those Instagram accounts and follow her on every single one, you guys. And she also has a YouTube channel. I'm going to just wait for that to pass through in the scrolling marquee so I can say it. But I also want you to subscribe to her YouTube channel. So that video that I just played is from that YouTube channel. So I encourage you to, when you get on YouTube, I want you to subscribe to that channel as well. And again, I'm looking at the scrolling marquee. I am waiting for it to pass through on the screen so I can just say the channel name. But we have to get through all them accounts first. So while I'm waiting for the YouTube channel name to pop up, visit her online. The website again is www.amiraforher.com. So if you're looking for psychotherapy, if you are looking for any mental health services, reach out to her. And the name is coming across right now, Phenomenal Private Practice Amira. So that is the YouTube channel, Phenomenal Private Practice Amira. So I want you to go to her YouTube channel, you guys, and subscribe to that channel today. All right. So, yes, so if you're looking for psychotherapy services, mental health services, if you happen to be in the New York City area, and which is where I'm at as well, and you're looking for one-on-one counseling, seek her out. All of this information, the copious information that it is, all of this information will be provided to you in the description. So if you missed everything that I said thus far, don't fret. It will be provided to you one way or another. And let me just make sure she did talk about her book. So I wanted to make sure to highlight her book. The book is called Healing from an Abusive Relationship, Life After the Breakup. Learn about what happened to you and release the pain of the past so you can have a great future. It's another long title, but you can find her book right now on Amazon. So first I want you to follow all of those Facebook accounts. Then I want you to follow all of them Instagram accounts. Then I want you to visit her website. And then I want you to purchase her book on Amazon.com. The book again is called Healing from an Abusive Relationship, Life After the Breakup. Learn about what happened to you and release the pain of the past so you can have a great future. So I did provide a direct link to the book in the description. So make sure you check that out and please support Amira Martin. All right, you guys. So now we have reached the conclusion of our episode. So now I'm going to put up my banner here as I get myself together. So we have reached the conclusion of yet another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today on Hot Topics. I hope that you took a lot from this information. I sure did. I definitely learned about the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath. So I hope you guys took that as well. But of course, I want to remind you guys that Hot Topics is a production of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So, if you or your child or your neighbor or your auntie or your friend down the way, uh, if you know that they need any kind of tutoring help, whether it is one-on-one tutoring, whether it's college college counseling, test prep, homework help, if they're just lazy in doing their homework, if they're struggling in school, if they're not doing the homework or they're constantly late, or all these things that we hear all the time. So, any kind of academic struggle, I want you to hit us up, you guys. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can also, excuse me, mm, you can also find us across our social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Eventbrite, and WhatsApp. So find us on social media as well. And you can also reach out to us that way as well. And you can also follow us on social media as well. So once again, excuse me, I will give you the website. So if you are looking for any kind of academic help or assistance, or your child or your friend or your neighbor or anyone, share our information. The website once again is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. So share that information with your friends, and you can also use it for yourself as well. And while you're doing all of this, you guys, I know I am throwing a lot at you. So while you're doing all of this, I encourage you, please provide your feedback about today's episode. Was today educational? Did you learn something? Did you not learn something? Let me know. Drop your feedback in the comments. Drop it in the comment section, the comment thread. Drop a star or five. Uh, so definitely leave your feedback about this episode. I definitely will appreciate it. All right, you guys. So we have reached the conclusion of yet another episode. Thank you again for joining me. I look forward to you joining me at the next episode. Thank you again, you guys. And now I am signing off.